We'll say one more good afternoon to folks who are joining us this morning. My name is Samantha Bowers. I mentioned it earlier, but if you're just joining us, I am the consultant for continuing education at the State Library of Iowa, and I'm joined by Sarah Williford and a number of other folks from the Iowa Library for the Blind and Print Disabled. You should be seeing our videos. As you're coming into the room this morning, you do not have video or mic rights, but we do welcome your questions and comments in chat. If you drive down towards the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's going to be a button that says chat, and change that drop down to all panelists and attendees. That pops up in there so that everyone can see your questions or comments or where you're calling from. As we go through the presentation today, I might reach out to you directly if your first and last name are not showing in our participants list. That makes it so much easier for me to take attendance after the fact if I know who was here today, because we want to make sure that if you're counting CE hours, you do get credit for this. So I just learned that Sarah, our main presenter today, is a former public librarian, has been in the front lines in Ankeny and was it Clarion or Clarinda?
Clarinda.
Clarinda, yeah. So, and she's been with the Library for the Blind for 7 years, I think she said. So I'm excited to see some of the resources she'll share with us today. So Sarah, I will pass the mic over to you.
Right. Thank you, Sam. And thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. I want to start with just a huge thank you to the State Library for and Sam for reaching out and partnering with us on these to provide the monthly webinars. We're really excited to be here with you and to be able to provide information about our services and our programs and how we can help you serve your communities as well. So I do have, again, I'm Sarah Williford. As Sam said, I do have a kind of a background in public libraries, and I've been with the department as the library director for 7 years next month. Time flies. So we have a lot going on, and I'm really excited to share with you. So as we're going, please don't hesitate to type in questions, or if you need clarification anytime. I will introduce my friends that are with me. So we do have Denise Bean, our youth services librarian, Leslie Heinzler, our special services librarian, and Tyler Sweat, our accessible media specialist, are with me today as well. So they're going to help me out if there's questions that come up in the chat. If I forget anything, jump in there, but they will also be helping me present each month. So you might hear from Tyler and I, you might hear from Denise and Tyler, you might hear from Leslie, just different combinations depending on what topic we're covering for the month. So thank you guys. Thanks Denise, Leslie, and Tyler for joining me today. A little bit more about our staff here at the department. We are a staff of 14. We have different kind of expertise or focuses. So any questions we usually can round up and answer. We have some expertise in accessibility, Braille transcription, audio transcription, assistive technology. So never hesitate to give us a call. So today's webinar, we can check off number one, introduce you to our library staff. And then I am going to do it's a brief history of the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled, and then also of our library. The history kind of explains to you who we are and why we do what we do. And then we're going to hit on information about our library's application process, eligibility, give you some information about services and programs, and then also just review resources for you and for your community. So that is what we hope to cover today. So I said brief history, right? So these are just some of how it started and where we're at now. And I'm just going to hit on a couple highlights because it really does help with the understanding of how we came to be, how our library came to be. So we kind of have to go back to late 19th century to see when library services for the blind began. But In 1931 is really where it was established by Congress. And the lovely picture up there we're looking at is of Ruth Pratt, Representative Ruth Pratt and Senator Reed Smoot. They both put in kind of dueling but similar legislation, put it forward. And so they combined kind of what both wanted from their legislation to come up with the Pratt-Smoot Act. And so when you ever hear that, you can remember the picture of Ruth with her lovely stole there. So what both of them wanted was to provide adequate service on a national scale through an appropriation that would be under the direction of the Librarian of Congress. So on March 3rd, 1931, the Pratt-Smoot Act became law, and the Librarian of Congress was authorized to arrange with other libraries to serve as regional centers to provide services, library services and materials for those who are blind. Also part of that was there was appropriations passed of $100,000 to kind of get that started. And it became the project book for the adult blind and was established. And this is actually the program and what is based, the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled is built off of. And they are turning 90 this year. So that is kind of where it all started. In 1933, kind of two very important things happened. One of these Denise will appreciate, but a uniform system of Braille, the standard English Braille, was established, which really then started standardizing Braille and how it would be produced and transcribed for what we have now. And then the other one was the development of the recording of audio discs began to take place in 1933. So in 1935, because of the development of the disc, funds were allocated to start constructing talking book machines. These played, we've gone from discs to records to cassettes to now our audiobook cartridges, which we'll talk about later. So it established that first audio machine to play books. The Pratt-Smoot Act was amended several times, but probably one of the most significant ones was in 1952. The language was changed in order to allow it to be expanded and include children. Prior to that, it was just a service for adults who are blind. Then in 1960, our library was established under the Commission for the Blind. And that is where we are still to this day. It's just we are now known as the Iowa Department for the Blind is where our library fits and where we physically are and fiscally live is with the Iowa Department for the Blind. Then in 1963, again, we moved to 10-inch discs for our audio. So I always have to pause though for a minute and think that really wasn't that long ago where we were using 10-inch discs. And then in 1966, some public law was passed, and that again extended the library services then to those who were physically handicapped. So we are now serving adults and children who are blind, and then those who physically are unable to read standard print. 1969, we move into the era of the cassette book. And I jumped all the way to 1996 here, but I don't want you to think nothing was happening. There was a lot going on in that time. There was really a lot of fine tuning on that audio piece with the cassettes and how it was being produced, and also with Braille and how Braille was being produced and mass produced. So there was a lot of development there. But probably the next big law that really impacted our services is in 1996, the Chafee Amendment was passed. And what this does is this law provides us, our library, and other groups that are producing specialized formats for the blind. We no longer had to gain permission from the copyright holder to begin production of that in an alternative format. Prior to that, we did have to have approval to do that. So what Chafee allowed then was for us to be able to do audio and Braille transcription on works without getting permission from the copyright holder, as long as those items were going to individuals who qualified for our services. So those who are blind and those who are physically handicapped. It also allowed author entities like the National Library Service and our library to reproduce and distribute these copies to our patrons. So this was a big change in how books are being produced and how we were able to get those to our patrons. Also, 1996 was the year web Braille was kind of launched and started taking form, and so Braille that could be downloaded and accessed through the web. So 1996 was kind of a big year for us. Then we're going to jump ahead to 2007, and this is where we start making the transition to the digital talking book player. So the player that we have now, I'll show you and kind of get into that piece, but that's where we come out of the cassette era and into the digital talking book. And then in 2013, BARD is Braille and Reading Download app. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it launches, and that gives our patrons access to audio and Braille materials on their devices, so smartphone, iPad, computer. In 2016, another kind of leap with the technology is it was approved that the National Library Service could start looking at refreshable Braille displays, and we also approved a new Braille code. And Denise will talk a little bit more about this. It's not a new code. They just made adjustments to make it more friendly, especially with that introduction of the web Braille. I don't know if you want to throw anything in there, Denise.
Yeah, it's just what's nice about the Unified English Braille. It's a code that works really well with different software downloads, but it's just they've made some changes to the code, but that went into effect for us 2016. But it works. It's everyone's adjusting slowly, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah, so that switch has really kind of made way for the Braille e-reader and kind of the Braille pieces as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And now we come to kind of the next big legislative piece for us, and what we're still working through is the Marrakesh Treaty. The United States became the 50th member to join the Marrakesh Treaty. And this expands what the Chafee Amendment did and really pulls in, it lets us go across borders and work with other countries to be able to exchange accessible format books across international borders. So again, this has just started. We are part of the pilot project for the Marrakesh Treaty. And it hasn't really taken off yet, but basically what the World Intellectual Property Organization and a couple other entities, including the National Library Service, are trying to do is create a catalog that will contain these works that countries can contribute to, and then our patrons would have access to it. There is quite a lack of, for us, access to Braille in other languages. So we're really looking forward to being able to be part of that and bring that in. So Marrakesh Treaty is one that we are working on right now. And really it's to target kind of that book famine I talked about before. And then 2020, this one is near and dear to Tyler's heart. We are part of the Braille e-reader pilot. Our library is participating, and I'll kind of show you and get into what the Braille e-reader is, but we are participating. We're one of 5 states in the country piloting the new Braille e-reader for our library. So So that is kind of a brief history. I will jump back to 2019, I think, for a minute. That is the National Library Service for the Blind changed its name. It was National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. They are now the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled. Our library too has made that switch. We just have not been able to get it done legislatively through that process because of just the last few legislative sessions. That hasn't been a priority. So our name change does have to go through that process. So you will see we're using it on things, but officially it has not been changed yet. So we go by both right now. For a while, we thought we had a bit of identity crisis, but we're okay. So again, back to our library. We are a regional library of the National Library Service. So we are one of those libraries that was established to provide the national services through the Library of Congress. Each state, I will say, their regional library will look different or be under a different state agency or maybe within a public library system. It really depends on the state and how they're set up. Our library is what we call a one-stop shop. We provide all of the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled services, and that includes audio, Braille, and we check out our digital audio players and now the Braille e-readers. Depending on what state you're in, some states contract with other states to provide Braille or to provide the talking book players. So again, if you have, if you're from another state or you have anybody who has moved from another state, our services might look a bit different, different than other states. Our library is under the Iowa Department for the Blind. We're located in downtown Des Moines. That's a picture of our building. We are, if you're familiar with downtown Des Moines, we're kind of near the Wells Fargo Arena, Hy-Vee Hall, in that area. So we, and I can't really tell you what floor the library is on in that building because we are kind of all over, all over this building because of our stacks and other functions. So what else is in this building with us is the other services the Iowa Department for the Blind provides to Iowans, and that includes, and I always miss one, our Adult Orientation Center. Some of those top floors there are actually residents. So we have adults who come and stay in our building and go through training to learn and work on their blindness skills and kind of those independent skills to help them in whatever they're planning to do. Maybe it's to get a job, to live independently. So that's what some of those floors are. We also have independent living program that provides services to younger blind and also those who are 55 and older. We have vocational rehabilitation. They work with clients who are seeking employment in those areas. We have our business enterprise program. They work with entrepreneurs who are developing their own small business. So you may see vending machines in rest areas or state buildings or around the state that are run and operated by our business enterprise program vendors. There's usually a sign up with Department for the Blind on there, so that they are with our building. What am I forgetting, guys? Education and training. We have a focus on, we say, transition youth, so 14 and older, and working with them on independent skills. So we have some of them that actually live in our building with a 4+ program through the school systems. So they too are learning those blindness skills and independent skills. I'm forgetting one, aren't I? I think that's everybody. So we do have a lot going on in our building, and it's great to be that close to some of the community that we serve and being able to partner with those other groups as well. So back to our library. Our library provides books and other materials in alternative formats to Iowa residents. So we do serve the whole state. And we just simply say we serve those who are unable to read standard print. We'll talk about eligibility in a minute. So those who are unable to access standard print, we serve them. So we have books available for checkout in Braille, large print Braille, so with the print and the Braille together, digital audio, and then we do electronic text and tactiles are part of our collection. And again, we talked about our library teams. We have different teams that work on different pieces within the library. So we have kind of our traditional library services that certain teams work on. And then we also have, we'll talk about in a minute, our Instructional Materials Center, and then our audio production and Braille production within the library as well. So really quick, I just thought I'd throw some statistics out there for you so you can kind of get a sense of what we do here. In 2020, we served about 6,000 Iowans through our library. We circulated over, this was a record for us, so this is a big deal. We circulated over 410,000 items from our library, and over 52,000 items were downloaded from the Braille and reading download application. So again, the items that we circulate, again, Braille, audio, large print, print Braille, tactiles, kits, and we, I will say I did the math really quick to see if we still were where I thought we were, and about 85–86% of our circulation is audio. So that is by far the most popular for us format that our patrons request. So the majority of our circulation does occur via mail. Sam and I were just talking about that. So during these curious times, we were able to stay open and keep our books circulating to our patrons through the mail. And how we do that is through that free matter for the blind or other physically handicapped persons piece. And each year, Congress does appropriate funds for the United States Postal Service to be able to use. So we can use, and other libraries like us can use that, that free matter piece. So it's always funny to me. They always remind us, even though it's free matter, it's not free. We hear that from the National Library Service a lot. So the United States Postal Service is reimbursed for the cost of the service. And reading materials that NLS, National Library Service, produces, or that we produce, and other libraries like ours, are sent and can be sent to and then returned by eligible readers using that free matter mailing. So also our playback, so our digital players, those pieces of equipment that our patrons need to be able to access that material, can also be sent using free matter, that free matter designation. So what else can I tell you about free matter? I know it's always a curious conversation, but so the special formats that we use within that free matter mailing is audio, Braille, large print, which is 4-point font or larger, and then there's also bold note music that might be mailed using that designation. So that is what we use to get the books to our patrons. And I would say, I didn't do the math on this one, but probably, well, and this was just probably not a good year to try to figure the statistic out, but prior to COVID, we probably did about 97% of our circulation was through the mail, and we have a little bit of a group that are walk-in who will come into our building and get their materials that way. So I'm going to jump into eligibility for our services, and this is what also appears on our application. So our eligibility for our library services is really based on blindness, low vision. I believe on the NLS one, it'll say visual impairment, and then physical, and then reading disability. And if ever there is a question on whether or not someone is eligible, we always just say, just give us a call, and we can kind of talk through maybe which eligibility fits them the best, or what we can do to help them kind of decide that eligibility. One thing that I do want to say is that the reading disability eligibility is going to go through some changes. In my opinion, much needed changes soon, I hope. So the National Library Service is looking at and working on changing to that reading disability eligibility. Right now, to meet that eligibility requirement, you have to have a certifying authority or a sign off of a medical doctor or a doctor of medicine, which is a bit outdated. And part of the push for the change is to match what the Marrakesh Treaty is requiring. And now that we are part of that, we have to, the National Library Service needs to align their eligibility to that. So what it'll do is take away that requirement of a doctor of medicine certifying authority and make it a broader group who can do that certifying. So they're looking at extending it to teachers, maybe AA, and different educators. Librarians were already on there. So kind of broadening that just to take away that barrier for those who have a reading disability who are unable to access standard print. So watch for changes on that. And right now I will say we are kind of living in the current requirement for that, but if anybody has questions, we will help them, or if it's a barrier to get that certifying authority of a doctor of medicine, have them give us a call. We have some things we can do to help with that. So before I jump into our application process, I'm just going to pause and see if there's any questions or anything I can answer.
This is Sam. I haven't seen any questions come through yet. Or here's one. Can you describe how a librarian determines eligibility? Are there guidelines to make that determination?
So for us, if somebody comes into our building and it's a blindness or low vision piece, we just have a conversation with the person. You can kind of see on the, on my slide there what they're looking for, but we take people's word for it, and also physical disability. Not everything is going to be apparent, not something that we're going to be able to maybe even observe. So we just have a conversation with that person and talk about where they fit, like with the blindness, the 20/200, those kind of things. So it's really a bit of the honor system with the person applying and just having a conversation. So how's that for vague? And if there's ever any questions, you can also send them to us and we can help make that determination. We hear from a lot of, I will say, public libraries, especially on the low vision, that they have a patron who they're going to refer just because the commercial large print in their library isn't cutting it. They're really struggling to read that, and using magnification is also can be very taxing and fatigue. And so that's kind of where the public librarians have referred people to us along those lines as well. So our library application process, we do have an application, both paper and online form that can be filled out. It's on our website. And I'm just going to highlight some of the most important pieces of that. So I always bring up name and address. I know that sounds a little funny, but name and address for us is key because we do so much of our circulation to the person through the mail. So address is really, really important for us. Then the certifying authority, this is required on our application. So again, that is somebody who is not a relative of the individual, certifying that they do qualify and are eligible for our services. So there's examples on our application, and just know that's just a short list of who can certify. You know, we have maybe activity director in a senior homes that will do that, librarians. We have teachers of the visually impaired, paraeducators also do that. So it is kind of, as long as they're not a family member, that they will qualify. We also look for just that they're in a professional capacity of some sort. So certifying authority is one of the requirements for our application. And then also, we ask, they can pick what format they'd like to receive their books in. So they can have any or all of audio, Braille, or large print. So that'll be asked. And then also how they would like to access our books. So what that means is our library circulation system actually lets us create patron profiles. And that we gather information from the patron on their likes and dislikes, authors, genre, those pieces. And then our circulation system can create book lists for them based on those preferences. So if they want us to pick the books for them, that's a choice. Or if they want to send us lists or place holds through our online public access catalog, our PAC, they can do that as well if they kind of wanted to be the one deciding what they want to read rather than us creating those lists. And they can do a combination of those two as well. I think most of our patrons do. So they'll have a list that they send in, but then our system will also fill in for that list as well. So we do have a piece in our application where we kind of talk about what they like and don't like to read, and that's just us creating this patron profile. So really quick, a bit about our collection. We have items for all ages, from board books to beginning readers to adult fiction and nonfiction. We have that. Here's a quick look, a snapshot of our collection. We have over 101,000 audiobooks that we can access, over 48,000 Braille titles, and over 10,700 large print. And again, we also have kits, tactiles, different pieces like that. Also part of our collection and what we check out are our digital audiobook players and our Braille e-readers. And we also participate in Bridges with Overdrive as well. I do want to talk a minute about our Braille collection. So our Braille collection runs throughout the building. So if you think back to the 6-story building I showed you, our Braille starts in the basement and goes to the 4th floor, our stacks. And why that is. So I said earlier, we have 48,000 titles in our collection, but most of these titles will consist of several volumes. So that equals a lot of shelving. So what you're looking at, those 2 pictures there are just some pictures of our stacks that kind of run throughout our building of our Braille. And just to kind of give you a point of reference. So Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows would be 10 volumes that we would send out if they would like the book in hard copy Braille. Ready Player One is 6 volumes, Where the Crawdads Sing is 4, and then Captain Underpants would be 1 volume. So just depends on the book, and that will determine the number of volumes. So. Really quick about, maybe, there we go. So audio is our most popular format, and the one that we receive back and forth most in the mail as well. So what I'm showing you on the slide right now is the plastic cases. So that's what's open there. It's kind of a clear plastic. That is what our cartridge fits into to go into the mail. A mail card slips into the outside of it, And on one side will be the patron's address, and on the other side is our address. So we will send it to them, and once they are done reading the books on that cartridge, they give that mail card a flip. Our address is on the back. They send it back to us, and we reload it with audiobooks. The cartridge is a plastic form. I don't know how else to explain it, kind of a plastic mold around a 4 gig USB drive. So that's kind of what the one picture is showing you. Usually our patrons have about 2 or 3, maybe 4 cartridges circulating back and forth with us. So they'll be reading one while we have one, or are adding books to it. So they can always have books ready to read. And we can we're fitting about 20. We usually do 20 per audiobook per cartridge. So these cartridges fit into our audiobook player. I'll show you a picture in a minute. And that is how our patrons can access what's on there. What we're also doing with these cartridges is for the Braille eReader pilot, this is how we can send downloadable Braille to our patrons to use with their eReader Braille. So I think Tyler's fit 80 Braille books onto one cartridge and sent it to a patron recently. Again, we're taking full advantage of that being a USB drive and being able to send our patrons the books they can access. So what you're looking at right now is a glamorous picture, but very, very important to us, of a mail tub. So our cases, the cartridges come back in their cases in mail tubs to us each day. And then we place them, that odd little contraption you're looking at is what we fondly call super dupe or super duplication. And what it's doing is we've actually inserted each cartridge into a drive, and our system will read the cartridge, see who that cartridge belongs to, which patron. It'll take a look at their book list and then download the books that are ready to go, that have been either chosen by them or by our system, and load them onto that cartridge, and then they go back into the mail. So we actually have 4 of our super dupe computers. So we will do 20 patrons at a time, 20 books onto each cartridge. So I'm going to brag on my staff a little bit. We were 5 years ago, we started doing the download of the audio. We are the first library in the country to move away from a physical audio collection to the downloadable, which we do now. And what that did for us is it was taking about 4 full-time equivalent staff to maintain, manage, all of that, the massive audio collection we had here in the building. So when we switched to the download, it took us to 0.5 full-time equivalent. And thus is why we now are able to have a youth services librarian and accessible media specialists like Tyler doing great work that directly impacts our patrons. So without their daring, willing to take a risk 5 years ago, we wouldn't be where we are at today and being able to do what we can do. So we always like to throw out there that we're first in the country. Some libraries haven't caught up to us yet either. So that is kind of really quick how we do our audio. There's a lot more bits and pieces to that. So, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. So our audiobooks and cartridges, how are they different from other audiobooks? To be able to use with our player, let me pull up a picture of that guy. To be able to work with our player, they are marked up. We call it marked up differently. So when the audiobook is transcribed, different points are marked in that book that allow it to be used with our players, so that you can navigate through the books a little bit quicker, as well as, again, use with our player. So it's really just in how they're transcribed and marked up. The National Library Service has had great luck working with commercial audio producers And we are seeing more where we don't have to start the transcription from scratch. They're giving the National Library Service the audio, and then they go in and make those tweaks so it can be used with our players. So what you're looking at right now is a picture of our digital audio player. You can see it's a green cartridge, not pink, peach, but that's where it goes into our cartridge. And then there's different functions on there that allow you to speed up. There's a sleep mode. You can bookmark spots within the book if you want to go back to them. So it does a lot of different functions. It also has what we call the bookshelf mode, and that allows you to navigate through those 20 titles and pick the one that you want to listen to. Also saves their spot when you stop listening. The other picture is the Braille e-reader that we are piloting and testing with our patrons. Over 120 of our patrons have an e-reader right now and are putting it through the paces. So you can, there's a cable that hooks to the cartridge and to the e-reader, and that is how you download the books to the e-reader. So what our patrons are really loving, and it's the debates of hard copy print in your ebooks, but is that instead of sending that like 10 volumes of that Harry Potter, we can download it to a cartridge and they can have it on the Braille e-reader. And I think somebody has like 500 books downloaded onto their e-reader.
Yeah, I think it was over 400 for sure. So yeah.
Yep. So they have quite a library on the Braille e-reader.
And we do have a question, Sarah, and it's how are these audio books cartridges different than other audio books, other than the equipment involved?
Yeah, so that comes down to just how we what they call markup and kind of design the audio itself, the transcription. So it does have those stops and ways we can bookmark and navigate through it. And I can see a question, how long are patrons allowed to keep the cartridges? We have no due dates on our materials. So really, when we send 20 books, some of our patrons, just with all library patrons, will whip right through those 20. Others, it'll take them a little bit longer. So really, it's theirs until they're done with it. Same with our equipment. It's checked out to them until they're done with it. Our Braille and our large print hard copies, that gets a little bit different. So if we do have waiting lists, things like that, we will encourage people to return those so the next person can have them. So I want to talk really quick, but not too long. Tyler will be doing next month on on our Braille and audio reading download. We call it BARD. This is through the National Library Service. So the downloadable audio and Braille that I just talked about that we put onto cartridge can also be accessed through the BARD app. There is iOS and Android app available. So on your phone, your smartphone, iPad, computer, you can really have access to what we have access to and can download for you 24/7. You can create a wish list. There are audio books, magazines, as well as Braille books and magazines that can be downloaded. And the kind of that you can see on the one screen, it looks similar to our player. With the play forward, again, you can mark, you have a sleep mode, and you can change the speed. So, so BARD is a great resource, and we're seeing more and more people shift to this just because, instant gratification, 24/7 access, and you don't have to wait for your cartridge to arrive. So BARD is another one we have. And then really quick about services and programs that we provide. So very much like all of your libraries, we have youth programming that Denise does. So we have Monday night and Saturday programs. Our current focus with those are on STEM. And then we have Books for Kids, where we send books to kids wherever they might want them. So mom and dad's house, grandma's, school, wherever they want access, with a real focus on giving them access to Braille, and making sure that they have that ready when they want it. We do things like the winter reading program, summer reading program. We also have adult programs, book discussion, winter reading challenge. We have a Friends of the Library group, as well as a Library Consumer Advisory Committee that help us with decisions. And then we also have a great group of volunteer audio narrators and Braille transcribers that help us with our work as well. I want to mention, kind of hit on a couple of special programs that might be something you want to look into. We were just talking, and I know Denise has talked about our Braille Bits program. And this program is designed for people who are sighted, individuals who are sighted, to learn Braille. And it takes you through 21 lessons that have kind of broken out into 21 really nice lessons. Start with the alphabet, lead you through, there's homework at times, and there's also a podcast that goes along with each of them. And so it's really a self-paced program to learn Braille. But you also have access to Denise, who is more than happy to help answer questions, be a mentor for you as you go through the Braille Bits lessons. The program kind of came from a request from parents who have children who are blind. They would like to also learn Braille along with their child. So that is where that stemmed from. But now I know Denise has some librarians that are taking it. We have teachers, we have grandparents. So if you're interested, that is on our website. And I also want to point out our YouTube channel. We have some great content, and it's pretty active content on different, all sorts of different topics. Denise's Monday and Saturday programs are put on there, but also Tyler does some programs through our Instructional Materials Center on accessibility. So I know you've hit on PowerPoint. Now I'm just drawing a blank on everything. PowerPoint,
Google Docs.
Google Docs.
That covered a lot of them.
So we also put webinars up like that might be helpful to you and what you're doing each day. And then one of the things we do want is for our patrons to also be able to be active participants in their own communities and in their own home libraries across Iowa. So I guess just all of you know that we are here to provide all the information that we can to you. We offer Braille and audio transcription services, assistance with accessibility, whether, making it easier for individuals to access the information in the format that they need and do that independently. So what we hope is that our website and resources, I'll give you a sneak peek here in a minute, will really help kind of get you started, but also just reach out to us. We are more than happy to help with what you are trying to do or need to do. And I don't want to end without mentioning another piece of our library, another unit within our library, and that's the Instructional Materials Center. We call it the IMC. The Instructional Materials Center's mandate, what they're charged with doing, is providing accessible educational materials for students who are pre-K through 12th grade and also post-secondary. So our mission in the IMC is to make sure that students who are blind or with low vision have the school materials that they need when their sighted peers have them. So really leveling that playing field and making sure they have the educational materials that they need. So we work with Braille transcribers and large print vendors and producers around the country to make sure that our students in Iowa have what they need for their education. And honestly, this means anything from textbooks, worksheets, quizzes, tests, assessments, you name it. we will help get that done. So this team, our IMC team, as well as other members of our library, we kind of all overlap in our duties. We work with teachers, school districts, the AAs, Department of Education, to make sure that the students are getting an accessible education. And then this also includes some of what Tyler does. He works with school districts, Department of Ed, the AAs on things like the learning management systems, so Google Classroom, Canvas, those pieces where students are accessing their materials to make sure that they are accessible as well. So if your library has a piece of something like that, or is interested or is using something that maybe you want to know if it's accessible or if we have any information on it, please let us know. Because we are looking at stuff all the time. Right now we're looking at code.org and accessibility of that. So please don't hesitate to ask. I threw the IMC's blog up here, idbimclibrary.blog. This is where there's a lot of information about Braille and kind of the educational, the accessible educational material piece if you ever need that information. The website, our main website, will also link you back to the IMC information if you need it. So finally here, so resources for public libraries and communities. We have a blog, which is actually pretty much our website now. It has everything and anything about the library on it. It's the Turning the Pages blog. It's iowalibrary.blog. And what we've done is we've built and started building a knowledge base, resources that we think will be helpful for you in your public libraries and within your communities. So you can get to that off our Iowa Library blog. It's under resources. And again, we also have a really active YouTube channel. And then you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. But really quick, just know that those resources for public libraries, we are building that. So more and more to be added. And we're trying to grab our current content and put it into this knowledge base for you, just to make it easier for you to find it, what you're looking for. And again, if you don't see it there or you can't find an answer to your question there, let us know. And we will work with you to solve whatever you need to solve. And really quick, I'll just throw this up. So again, thank you to the State Library. We're so excited to be able to offer upcoming webinars. And here's some of the ones that are upcoming, and then other topics that we're hoping to cover throughout the year. So a lot of what I hit on will go in more depth as the months come. And again, you'll be hearing from Tyler and Denise and Leslie as well coming up. And this is just, if you have this is our general library email and phone number that'll get you to the library's phone and desk, that 1323 number. But then also off our website, you can contact any of us and we'll be happy to help. So you just got like whirlwind tour.
I did like the 90 years, and congrats on that fun birthday. 90 years of history in 15 minutes or less. That's very fun. Right. We did have one question, if you just have a minute to address. Did you say something towards the beginning of the presentation about music notation? And someone is curious about that.
Yes, so we do have, they're rare, but there are music Braillists. So we do have access to music Braillists, as well as the National Library Service has a music library. So we can work with them to get music that maybe is needed in Braille. We do a lot for the students who are in band or playing an instrument. So a lot of music Braille going the students' way as well. So yes, and I think if I don't, I will add it to the public library resources. The National Library Services music library is pretty phenomenal. So.
Oh, that's really great. If there's other questions, folks, we do have about 5 minutes until the top of the hour. Feel free to drop those in chat. But I guess from my perspective, Sarah, wow, all this technology that you guys have done, and it's so cool to see here that you're a national leader in that. And congrats to Tyler and the whole tech team. That's just really a cool thing that I had never really put together before. So kudos on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and one question that comes up in my mind is when you say someone has, about 400 books downloaded or 500 books downloaded, I kind of have copyright flags going off in my librarian head. So is there something different with that?
Yep. So that takes you back to the Pratt-Smoot and then also the Chafee Amendment. That allows libraries who are serving those who are blind with low vision, aren't able to read standard print, to be able to provide that. Our books also can be simultaneously checked out, so a little bit different than maybe Bridges. All of our patrons could have the same book at the same time, and that goes back to that Chafee Amendment.
Well, that's great. Such a good way to make these materials even more accessible to folks to use.
There was a question in the chat box, and it was wondering what the Braille, what it stands for.
On your logo, yeah.
And the logo, yes.
It is. So Iowa Department for the Blind, we go by IDB. So that's letter I, the letter D, and the letter B.
Now we're almost experts. No, I'm just kidding, Denise.
Three letters.
3 letters.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just close with the question. So suppose someone walks into my library tomorrow who I think could benefit from your services. Where should my first stop be? Is it that application form? Is it a phone call? Is it what recommend?
So our application will kind of walk through the services that we provide and who's eligible. So that would be a great starting point. If there is more information needed, I would send them to our iowalibrary.blog. There's information about our services, see if it is the right fit. But we're always welcome to filling out that application, and then we can kind of take it from there, what services they need. A lot of times too, we're able to maybe point them into a direction of services that the department provides as well that might be helpful. So, but yeah, so the application will give you a sense of what we offer, and the eligibility piece is a good place to start.
Well, that's really great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Tyler, and I don't want to forget anyone's name, Tyler and Denise and Leslie. Am I forgetting someone? No, Tyler, Denise, Leslie, Sarah. That's everyone?
Yeah,
No.
you're good. No,
Thank you guys for being with us today.